So I was talking with my brother recently about this idea, and it's not so much the idea that I'm focusing on, although I do think I will go into that. But what comes to my mind and the point that I want to emphasize is the way things are worded. Um, we're talking about philosophical differences, and you know, when somebody tries to convey a message to somebody else about a contradicting piece of information, a belief, um, oftentimes the reply might be, "Who are you?" Like, who are you to tell me this, that, or the other? And what I've come to believe over time is that when someone says, "Who are you?" oftentimes, I can't say all the time, but a good number of times, it's a wall, you know. Um, Again, one of my favorite philosophers, when giving a conversation, said to his audience, "Please allow me to rephrase this statement so that it doesn't sound so familiar that you miss what I'm trying to say." I don't think he worded it that way, something close, but like the idea is kind of like some things are just said so often that they don't mean the same thing anymore. Uh, Such as, "Who are you?" Like, who are you to tell me anything? Though it is stated in the form of a question, it's not actually a question. It's more of like, by saying, "Who are you?" what's implied is that you should already know, we both know, you can't tell me nothing. But that's not always the case. It isn't that you can't tell me nothing, it's that I don't want to hear it. And I believe you don't have the right to tell me. So, one thing that I realized, or a way I've thought of that could get past this is, you know, by the way I choose to word certain things. In this case, it would be my reply versus my statements. I don't know if I said that right, but it's like, who are you to tell me that this, that, or the other? And I would say something like, well, who is anybody to tell you? Like, who is anybody to tell you? Is there somebody that can tell you? And someone may say, yes. And then they would give the name of a person with credentials, a person with authority, a person they would listen to. Or they might say, no, nobody can tell me. And so, the conversation can branch off into a couple, with each question, it can go down another lane and become a bit more complicated. Another variable can be added and it can become hard to follow. But if they say like, no, nobody can tell me, then I'm like, you might be able to say, well, why can't anybody tell you? Like, you have it figured out. But like, well, no, I don't have it figured out, but I'm certain enough, or yes, I have it figured out. Then I might be able to question them and say, well, how did you figure it out? Or I might be able to say, well, how do you know that I'm not going to present you with new information? Then they might say something like, well, because I already know what you're going to say. Or, um, I don't know, man. Like, it gets really complicated to think about, but the idea is just like, it's not just the wording, it's the way it's said, it's the emotion that things are said with. Um, it's like, it's the tone of voice, it's context, like the timing when you say it. So a couple things I think of, and I don't know how far down the wrong lane or how confusing I'm going to make this topic, but Another idea is kind of like, oftentimes when people ask questions, like I know people have asked me questions and I'll reply with another question. And they'll say, why can't you give me a straight answer? And I might say something like, why does it have to be a straight answer? Or I might say something like, are you sure you're not getting the answer? Like, is the answer not implied within the question that I asked you? You know, like if you say, if you ask me, did you go to the store today? I may say, and this may be one of those statements that loses its value because it says so often that it's really more taken as a sarcastic remark. But I might reply saying, is the sky blue? And if you say yes, and because you know that the sky is blue, well, if the answer to my question is yes, then the answer to your question is yes. So, did you go to the grocery store today? Is the sky blue? Like, you know, who are you to tell me what I can and can't do? Is there anybody that can tell you what you can and can't do? And oftentimes too, it's kind of like when a question is answered with a statement, there's so much information that's implied within that statement. As Cornell West said, unarticulated presuppositions, tacit assumptions. Look at me trying to use my big boy words. Somebody's probably watching this thinking, do you even know what that means? Yes, I looked it up. Can't remember the full definition right now, but I looked it up. And if I'm using it out of context, then show me how. Tell me how. Comment on how. But yeah, so like, something you might say like, oh, well, he's a criminal. Well, what does that mean? Like, does that mean that he's a bad person? Or does it simply mean he has like he has been convicted of a crime? Well, like, what if, I mean, I don't know the exact laws, but like a crime could be jaywalking. So if you've been, you know, convicted of jaywalking, if you've been cited or speeding. I mean, I guess there's different levels, and I can't speak on it too much because I am not qualified. But I think that you should get my point anyways. It's like by saying that person is tall, does that mean that they're an athlete? Does that mean they play basketball? You know, if that person is athletically gifted, man, you know, he's fast. Like if that person has nice clothes or a nice car, does that mean they have a lot of money? If they have a lot of money, does that mean they're rich? So it's kind of like asking a question can answer a question without, or at least by minimizing the amount of presuppositions that would be implied. I feel like the way I used that was redundant, but yeah, like the amount of information that was already assumed beforehand that just comes with the statement. Furthermore, unarticulated information that hasn't really been thought much about and organized. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's a tricky thing. Point of the video, because this is a rabbit hole that I think is go much beyond, it would go much further than 10 or 11 minutes for me to even try to talk about, at least to the extent that I would like to talk about it. But this whole idea is just the way, the effect of our words, the effect of the way we structure our sentences, the effect of our language, implicit knowledge, implicit assumptions. It's crazy. Just something that I've thought about. Maybe somebody will see this video and say they'll have some feedback, some commentary for me to reply to, for me to consider and maybe revise my thoughts on this video, find where I have made an error or how I could have delivered my message better. With all that being said, Language is tricky.